Let's go. All right, bro. How you been?
Surfing. Yeah.
Fucking jealous.
Yeah, that was good. Bloody windy shit.
Windy shit.
That was all right. So, back again. Another week with you.
Oh,
fuck.
I've missed you.
It's tragic.
It was a sad week. I was like, where's Scotty? Talk to him.
It's all good. We're here.
We are here. So this is the second episode of our songwriting kind of series. And we're going to talk today about guitars. So this is something that has taken over my life since the age of a young teenager. And we're just going to talk today sort of about how not just me, but how we sort of view guitars, how guitars can be used for songwriting, how I use them for songwriting. And then I'm going to actually show a couple of my babies and kind of go through a few of the notions of how I utilize them for different types of music, how I use them to serve different parts of the song, different genres, different guitars, different brands, different models. For some people who don't know, you kind of utilize them for like the different types of music you're making. So we're gonna go into that.
Acoustic, electric acoustic, slide, steel guitars.
Nylon string,
bro, I was listening,
12 string.
I was listening to some bluesy steel guitar slide shit the other day.
Nice.
That's just cool, man. See, that's if I was a guitarist, that's where I'm like, that's my niche right there. I'm just sitting out in the country missing some teeth.
Yeah.
Fucking, I'd be down for that shit.
But the funny thing is for me is that I've done a bit of slide guitar and I don't like it.
Oh, rat shit.
I've never been a fan.
Just detune it and throw some distortion.
Yeah. Oh, if you get weird with it. But I'd say like a stock standard sort of like slide guitar, it's just a bit like...
Yeah, I suppose. I don't know. So, some of it I like. But
it's like certain string instruments, like, this is going to sound bad, but I can't take it seriously. Like banjo, I can't really take it seriously, but ding, 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 ding. It's just...
Well, depends on...
I've seen people play them really well.
Country.
I went to the folk festival.
Yeah.
And I saw guys there just rip the banjos up.
Bro.
But it's still a banjo.
It's still a banjo.
Still a banjo.
Yeah, when you see it, what is it, Midwest or like that? It's that country stuff, where they're
American country.
Yeah, and they got the banjo, they got violins, and they're doing their thing, and it's just like there'll be like 4 or 5 guitarists and a banjo player and a violinist, and I'm like, it's pretty cool, but it's pretty redneck as well. But that's fine. That's fine. So anyway, for your guitars, you're really big, from what I know, from my experience with you. You're really big on tone. Like there's like, let's break it down. There's a lot of different guitarists. There's like rhythm guitarists, lead guitarists. Then we talk about bass being more predominant in songwriting and all this sort of thing as well. Like there's hell bassists out there that are just like, yeah, that's bass driven music, The guitarist isn't that good, but the bass is fucking ripping.
Yeah.
But I know with like a lot of guitarists, from what I've seen, they always try and, especially if there's 2 guitarists, they're always trying to I don't know, there's like that, it's kind of cool, but the tension of like the competing.
It depends on how the roles are defined. If it's a lead and a rhythm, or like if it's a singer and a rhythm who's doing rhythm guitar, maybe just a little bit of lead, like there's not really much tension. But I think if it's like 2 guitarists and then a singer, it's like, well, who is what?
You probably see it more in metal.
It's definitely a metal thing.
Yeah.
I think in like any other genre, like funk, if they have 2 guitarists, or what else has 2 guitarists normally? Pop music sometimes. But I think pop music is like, with the guitars, like, again, it's very defined. And I probably wouldn't say it's not as crucial to the music as maybe like the vocals, whereas like everyone knows that if you listen to like metal or rock, guitar is obviously like
that's the key.
It's
Yeah, it's always
the main part.
The riff.
Yeah, the riff.
And whenever a guitarist is trying, like that thing you sent me the other day, and it's so true. You'll be in a practice room, and the guitarist is trying to tune, and the drummer just the guitarist is like going, ding, ding, ding,
This
ding. Yeah, that shit happens.
That's funny as fuck.
Fuck.
It's so funny when that
Yeah.
happens.
It's like,
Why do drummers love this riff so much?
fuck, bro, there's like so many. Yeah, we'll get into drumming another time. But
Yeah.
guitars, like,
Next time.
so one thing I noticed about your guitaring, which I would find as a musician being a drummer, I found extremely attractive about your music was I personally love rhythm guitarists because they're going to write a song and their structure gives you as a drummer heaps of breathing room to do different things, and they're generally pretty cool with it. I've been lucky enough to meet probably you and one or two other good rhythm guitarists in my life that are just that's just what they did well. They just had fucking wicked chords, wicked tunes, wicked sounds, and they were more into the tone in the song, which I love. Whereas I've met lead guitarists and seen them back to back, not showing each other their riffs, and I'm like, fuck, are we in the same band?
Yeah,
like, you know,
weird.
This is weird.
You're meant to be a team.
I'm not showing him what I'm doing, and I'm
Yeah.
like, what the fuck?
Like you're meant to be a team.
Yeah.
And then you end up just like competing against each other.
So
It is strange.
Tone is a big thing for you.
It is.
It's a massive thing for you.
Yep.
And I've noticed because you got the PRS.
Yeah. Should I bring it over?
Yeah, let's have a look. Mate, she's a humdinger, this one.
Yeah. I've wrote a lot of songs with this gal. PRS SE Orianthe. I've had this now for 10 years.
Show us the body. Go up.
Yep. So
Yeah, fuck yeah, look at that shit.
replace the pickup here. Different one. Yeah, it's got a few battle wounds, but
That's
I treat them rough. Treat them mean, keep them keen.
yeah. I've heard that thing going through. Now the other part that goes with the guitars, obviously, this goes into the woods and the neck of it and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Your strings set up, or what gauge strings?
Yeah. So the gauge strings I use on mine. So when we were playing, I'm in our old band. I would play 50. So they were 11s. So it was 9 are the more real thin light gauge, and there's 10s a bit thicker and 11s. So I generally use 10 or 11s because we're playing in drop C. So the tuning is if it's E standard is your standard guitar tuning. Most songs are written in that. Then there's you go down half a step where everything's flat or sharp depending on how you want to interpret it. And then there's the tone down, so D standard, and I drop the D down to a C to get that extra kind of chunkiness.
Ah, yeah. See, I'm completely tone deaf, even though it was a vocals, which is weird. Luckily, I can rap good.
Yeah, so with that setup is I really like drop C at that time because it really allows me to it can be heavy, but you can be very dynamic, and it has and everything's still very clear. As much as down tuning guitars is fun as fuck, and I agree. One of my other guitars in drop A, it's fun, but I would say you do limit yourself a little bit because it's all right, we're just writing heavy riffs now. It's a bit harder to do, or you're always going back to the low string because you're I want to get that, which is fucking fun. But for me, I'm I like that balance of I can be heavy, but how can I be creative in a way to be heavy differently?
This is a thing for me that I would always talk to engineers about, because I only know what I see on guitars, and I hear guitarists talk and I'm a little bit blind to what's going on, and I'm like, oh, they're talking about their shit and that new pedal that someone got and it does this, that and the other, which generally gets erased when they go in the studio. The engineer's like, throw that shit out, we're going to do a lot of it online.
Yeah.
But I bought this new fuzz pedal.
And it sounds terrible in the mix.
But the thing is, I would always talk to engineers and be like, let's just detune it. And the last time I talked to Zoran, he showed me this song. I can't remember what it was.
He's a producer, by the way. We've worked with a lot.
Yeah, and he showed me the song. It was in drop B, maybe.
Okay.
Which is not super.
It's getting there.
Was it drop B or drop D? It was something.
Because they're very different.
Yeah. once again, I'm not educated.
No, it's all right. I just want to put out there. It is quite different.
It sounded so heavy, and it was like it's the mix.
Yeah.
They're running.
It's the mix, and it's everything together. It's like a solid drum pattern to then a solid bass driving it, and then the riff can really pop. It's like I'll never forget when I first heard Waffle by Seven Dust a while ago, and like when that dun 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 dun, and I'm like, that's sick. That's fucking heavy. That's drop B. And I was like, oh, it sounds lower than that. And it's really grunty. And I'm like, and as I was at SAE audio school, and I was like, how do they get it to do that? And then the engineer, the guys there was like, well, most of this is actually the bass. The guitars are doing a part of, obviously they're coming through and it sounds grunty, but with that simplified drum pattern and the bass just locking in, it sounds really good and heavy. And I'm like,
So
it's the guitar tone, it's the guitarist, sure, but it's everything else working together to make it heavy. It's like another really famous heavy guitar riff is Lamb of God, and the song "Laid to Rest" by Lamb of God. That's a very heavy riff, and even a heavy breakdown. That's just drop D, so that's just E standard tuning with the low string dropped down, and it sounds heavy as shit, but it's still just like drop D. So,
are they still playing in? They wouldn't be playing in drop D now, would they?
I don't know. I'm sure they've played around
because they're like blues guitarists.
Yeah, they're blues guys. I think they've mucked around with other tunings, but I don't know. I don't know what they're up to these days.
That's the other side. Once you start dropping your tuning, your strings start to do a bit of weird shit. You can't really play the same.
Nah, well, you also got to then like think about the gauge of your strings. Also, can your guitar handle it? Because now it's like, well, are we going to drop it down to like? I mean, Architects, love that band. They're fucking great, but they play in like they do 6 strings and they play in like drop G, which is like pretty nuts in my opinion because of clarity. But they manage to do it. But they make really heavy, like pretty heavy, gentle, like progressive metal sort of stuff, and it sounds good for what they do. So I mean, it can work, but
what tuning are they in? Sorry,
drop G.
Yeah, that's like I think Northlane, same sort of thing.
Northlane have 7 strings, but I think they might be in that, or maybe a little bit.
I think
lower.
they're in the drop G.
Yeah, sorry. And then obviously like the 8 strings, that gets even more crazy. So the 8 string guitar,
like the 10 strings.
Like, there's a band who I used to thrash. I think this are still going, but I don't think they go as much anymore, but there was they were called Hacktivist, and the guy in that played in drop E, which is, if anyone doesn't know, that's a complete octave drop from standard tuning. He used an 8-string guitar, and it sounded fucking ridiculous. Just
turned into dubstep.
But it worked, and it was heavy, but the way that because he'd produced it, I think his name was Timothy, I can't remember, I used to follow him, and like his mixes, and I'll just be like, how do you get that low? And you have a bass player with a 6-string bass. I'm like, how do you get that low and make it sound clear? Because that gets really fucking muddy. You've got so many low frequencies. Because at that point, you're battling with the bass, and you're also battling with like the kick drum. Like, how are you going to separate that in the mix? And like, that's always what I find interesting about bands who play in those tunings, and even when you play live, because how are you going to get that? Like we've seen our fair share of heavy bands play drop tune guitars. I've heard some horrendous ones of just like even really famous bands. I won't name them, but I heard like their guitarists, and I'm like, I can't hear anything because their guitar is tuned too low. The live sound engineer maybe is struggling with the venue acoustics to get it to cut through. So all you're getting is like the drums and then the bass.
So that's where I think, like, I suppose that, and then it comes down to money with those bigger touring bands. They have like really they dial their shit in so bloody well, and their songs are.
But also, you have to make appropriate changes as well per venue, because every venue is really different. Outdoor venue to indoor to amphitheater to small club or whatever you're doing.
Or fuck all people and you get reverb.
Which
is most of us bands in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Because fuck all people.
Playing to a room of like the sound engineer and maybe and the other bands.
Yeah. Some of your mates going, yeah, bro, you got this.
Yeah,
mangy. But but then it comes back to like also songwriting, which is something I would give you a lot of credit for is rhythm sections. And you also had the mindset as well, being a rhythm guitarist and being really open musically and understanding songwriting. You would also then leave, when we'd written a song, you'd be like, I'm just going to leave this part. And I'll be like, oh, why? And you'd be like, bass. Like, let's just let the bass, whoever's writing bass in this part, like, let's let the bass go through this and like drive the song. And it was like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. And like, if the bassist and the guitarist can really, really work that in, I think that's when you get that just solid punch behind it.
Yeah, and it's like leaving room for kind of, even one of our songs I remember we wrote, I think it was Close Call, but we never released it. But anyway, you were like, oh, we should put a drum break in here. And I was like, oh yeah, and then we put it in. I'm like, oh, that works really well. Just like a little drum break, like 2 bars, and it just sounded really good. Just to kind of add a bit of flavor in there. But it's just nice because sometimes, like, especially in heavy music, when guitars get too carried away, it gets a bit I think fatiguing for the ears. That's the other thing. Like, I've sort of, with my songwriting as I've developed, and I think you probably have as well, it's like when you overdo something too much, probably with like the hip hop stuff, like I find like, not that I know a little bit, but it's like if you rap and you keep like repeating the same thing, it's like that is just like kind of fatiguing for the listener.
Oh, it's annoying as shit.
Yeah, it's like, and like, that's why I think with someone like Eminem, what I think a lot of people love about him was just not just the skill as a lyricist and the technical ability, but the different voices and the way he'd rhyme and go in and out, and then even do like pop song choruses, which I think for when he came out, it wasn't really a popular thing to do that. To like have a pop song chorus in like a hardcore hip hop song. Well, I don't think that was really a thing. And then now every rapper, tries to be like a pop, try and do like the pop chorus or something in it. But before that, like if I listen to like NWA or anything like that, like there's no chorus.
Nah. With and the thing when I look at like guitars, like if I walk into like a rock
guitar shop,
guitar shop, guitars and just do a Saturday morning at guitar.
Oh, that meme.
It's just fucking just noodling and shit. And I was like, that is every music shop on a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
As soon as I'd
hate to work in those places hungover.
It'd be horrible, wouldn't it? Shoot me now. I'll walk in and I'll do the standard thing, go look at all the drum shit and ping all the cymbals like a dick. And then, but I'll always walk up to like bass and guitars and stuff. And I think for me, like if I wasn't playing drums, there's 2 instruments I would love to learn. One is bass. I think bass is so cool. It's so cool.
I love playing bass.
Extremely underrated. It is. It is an absolute must. Bass and piano is the other.
Piano is the one for me. So music comes from, like
it's the king. It's the absolute best instrument in the world, in my opinion, is piano. You can do anything. You can write anything.
Yeah, you can really do. Yeah, piano and guitar are the most like
you can write anything.
You can write anything on it, but I'd say piano even more so than a guitar. But yeah, they do have their differences, and like if you understand it, like but I mean I can play a little bit of piano, but I'm pretty shit.
The thing I was gonna say is that you go into. I always like look at all the guitars, and for me, I'll see like the cool. I'm just such a dork at this. I'll look at like the cool paint jobs and all something like, oh man, that's sprayed like that, and it's got that color and that. And then I see floating tremolo, like the fucking, and I'm like, man, that's what I should do. And I was like, I fucking would never know how to work that. And they go out of tune. Are they getting better? Because they were notorious.
They are getting a lot better. Like locking tuners now.
Yeah.
And if you want to do your dive bombs, which they get called, the technique of when you grab the whammy bar and just go, and then you make those sounds. Very popular in the 80s and the
90s.
And then the 90s kind of in the middle. Yeah, he brought it back, allegedly. Like, I've kind of read into it because in the 80s, it just got so fucking overdone. Like, everybody, like, to like a pop level, where like in a pop song, those big hair metal bands and stuff, they all would do fucking dive bombs all the time. And then it became like kind of cringy because like, all these guys in these hair metal bands and these, insert dive bomb guitar solo with like a blues lick. It's pretty boring and repetitive. Well, by the end of the kind of the 80s from what I've read, but then Dimebag Darrell kind of made it like cool again because he's like writing obviously like simple groove riffs and then the solos are crazy.
He was the best of both worlds,
He really managed to nail
it was just like the most, in some ways, the most basic rhythm sections in some parts were just like, that is for the guy who he was. You'd be like, you're writing that, and it was like, yeah, man, because he knew he was locked in with his brother on the drums.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just do this solid. Rex is gonna do this solid on the bass, and it might drive a little bit more, and then the vocals are just gonna smash it in the face. And then when it gets to his lead part, he's like, all right, I'm gonna fucking destroy now. Just go all over the place. And that's, to me, that's a very skilled musician. That's someone that knows, especially playing guitar, when they can just pull right back.
Yeah.
Just play the most basic rhythm, going, writing a song, it's going to have lyrics over it. I'm going to let the song breathe. And there's going to be a moment when I can really shine. And then they've got the skill to just, at that moment, just switch.
Yeah.
Into like, I'm a full lead guitarist now. And it's like two minds. It's pretty clever. I like that shit.
Yeah, well, I think that's the big thing about guitar solo. We touched on it a little bit last time. Like, with a guitar solo, it should be about what are you bringing with the guitar solo? What are you adding to the song with it? So most of the guitar solos I like are more like a vocal part at times, or if they are a bit shreddy, it's like more of like a very colorful, interesting sort of guitar solo, rather than like, hearing like the blues solos, or very like there's a scale on the guitar, the pentatonic, which every guitarist knows, and a lot of solos throughout the years have been in this scale, and it has been used up has been used up to shit. And so when I hear if I still hear bands do it, if it's a blues band, I'm like, I understand, keep it simple, and blues is quite simple music, but when it's like rock or metal or and those sorts of genres, and even in pop when they try and do it, and I'm like, really? Like, pretty boring. Like, this has been overdone to shit. Why are you just going to be in that scale? And I mean, like, Kirk Hammett from Metallica, I mean, love the guy. Great band, but fuck, they do love the pentatonic.
Yeah, well, I mean,
and I think they'll do like a minor, like the harmonic minor, I think, as well. Don't quote me on that one. But anyway, like, it's very, very much with guitar solos. Like, what are you bringing with it? What are you bringing with it? That's how I would look at it. But I mean, hey, do what you want. If you want to shred your heart out. But even myself as a guitarist, if I hear someone shredding their heart out, I'll just be like,
yeah, same for me.
Shrug my shoulder. It's like hearing as I was talking about last time, like the progressive metal bands, or if you want to be progressive, that's cool. But yeah, the audience is going to be pretty.
If you're doing a lead, make that lead tell a fucking story. Like, exactly. Don't show off.
Yeah.
Make the lead like take that song to the next level by its own story, and then like even when you go back to your rhythm will progress more, and then it's and that's something I love rhythm guitars and stuff, just because it leaves such an opening as a drummer. Obviously, sometimes as a drummer you can do way too much. You're like, oh, rhythm guitarist is doing that. Fuck, I'm gonna do so much over his rhythm guitars, and then you realize, like, hang on a minute,
that's
like,
not the point.
That's not really the point. Now I'm showing off. But yeah, I think for me as well. So you get like the guitars that you want and all that, and the different strings and the gauges and pickups is another thing as well. When we went to Seven Dust, and I've seen Slipknot and System of a Down,
lots of heavy bands.
I've seen lots of bands, man, from punk bands that like there's too much to go on, like 20 something years of going to gigs and stuff. But when we went to Seven Dust, I just remember standing there just going, that is the best, clearest guitar tone I've ever heard.
That was great.
It was
What's his name? Clint. I can't remember his last name.
It was rattling me. It was so perfect and so precise.
That's one of the best. I agree. It's one of the best. And the Power Station, out of all places, is an Auckland venue. Yeah, Power Station, being real, is notoriously has bad sound at times.
Yeah, it's not the best.
It's not the best, but it sounded amazing in there.
God, it was just cutting through the tone of his guitar, his playing of it, and that's when you knew, like, okay, 20 plus years of touring for these guys, they got their shit dialed in.
Yeah.
But I remember saying to you at the time, I've never heard a guitar tone this good.
Like, the only other band I've seen where like the guitars were so clear I could hear every little thing was Machine Head. I saw them play at Soundwave, for the first time. I've seen them twice, but when they played at Soundwave, it sounded amazing. I was like, wow, I can hear every little detail.
Wow.
But I'm like, this must be because of them, because the other band who played before, like, it was very different. But maybe they were more dialed in. Maybe their sound engineer had, their shit together more. I don't know. It's hard to kind of gauge it, but I could hear every little quality.
I've heard that about Meshuggah. I've heard Meshuggah is just absolutely like.
Have you seen the lighting guy for Meshuggah?
Yeah. It's fucking
It's nuts.
I've heard
That's
that
nuts.
Meshuggah is yeah. I'm yet to see them, and I hope I do get to see them.
Yeah, I regret not going to see them when they came a few years ago
because I've just heard it's just that good. They're that precise, and I was like, fuck, that's pretty impressive.
I mean, even like that Bleed, obviously the biggest song, Bleed,
Yeah,
but
famous,
even just everyone kind of knows this in the metal scene, but the difference of like how he play, like with the drumming, we could talk about that more in detail next time, is like how he's doing a different type signature with his hands and his feet.
He's switching up. We'll go into that, but he's switching it up like every bar. It's just changing every time. Like his feet are doing. There is a consistent pattern, but he will just start to like add little different things just to kind of make it a little bit more tasty. But that when it comes to guitar, I was completely mind fucked when I saw Seven Dust live. I was just like, Jesus Christ, that made me want to learn guitar.
Yeah,
I was just like, this is fucked up.
Sounds so cool.
Yeah, definitely. And then they've got like the other thing. So you go from like guitars, and then you go into like obviously the tones, which is a huge part is guitar, but then a huge part is amps. You've got amps, then you've got like the
gear,
speakers, then you've got your pedal board or what pedals you're using or not using.
Yeah, I mean, you could make it as complicated and as crazy as you want, but at the end of the day, it's like, do you need it all? And I don't know. It depends on what you're trying to achieve. Like for me, it's like, well, the guitar itself needs to be reasonably good quality. If you have a good guitar, to be honest, like that's better than a good amp. Having a crap guitar and a good amp, good guitar's better. Because you're playing it. You're not playing the amp.
Yeah.
So you want to have it feel nice in the hands, the fretboard, the strings, yada yada. And then of course from there, in between the amp and your guitar, you can then put in whatever you want if you want the pedals. Ideally, you have a tuning pedal, number one.
Yeah, I definitely.
So that'd be the biggest thing. But of course, you can get as crazy as you want. You can put in the phases, the chorus, reverb, delay. You can put in tremolo pedals, which are cool. Whammy to octave pedals. I can obviously
10 different distortions more. And fucking
fuzz pedals. Just but if you have a good amp, you don't even if the amp is good as well. Like the more also something else to consider is the more pedals you have in the chain, it actually takes away from your tone because it's taking longer to get to the amp. So you're actually losing out on some tone if you have too many pedals.
I also find there's a lot more to go wrong.
Yes, you're right.
We also there's always like that, and you go to a gig and you hear
like it's a patch cable, and that's the other thing. It's like investing in. That's the thing. If I had any advice to anybody who's a guitarist and wanting to build their pedal boards or amp or whatever you're trying to do, don't cheap out on cables. For the love of God, do not cheap out on cables. Do not trust a venue as well. And to be honest, I wouldn't trust like, these work at the moment at home. Sure, you're at home, you're in your lounge or your living room or whatever. It's all nice and, it's quiet and it's not crazy. You go to a venue, people might step on your shit.
Oh, yeah.
And it's horrible. I'm not saying they should, but they fucking shouldn't. But it's like, you got to consider the change of environment. Drunk people fucking pouring stuff. Like, I've had people almost break my pedal board. I've lost count now. And I used to play in a cover band for 2 years. Fuck, the amount of drunk people almost falling on my pedal or stepping on it and stuff. It's it happens whether you like it or not. Yeah. So you have to consider those real world sort of places. And the bigger your pedal board is, the more space you need. Your stage you're probably going to play, like, unless you're fucking touring in a big band, you're not going to have any room. Well, especially in New Zealand, and if you're small time, your stage is fucking tiny. Good luck even trying to fit your amp on there sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a lot of things to consider. And when you do a lot of gigs, you want to make it as easy as possible for yourself. Because you don't want to have too much gear, because otherwise it's going to make things harder. You got more stuff to bring in. Like you said, more stuff can go wrong. And that's kind of my thinking is like simplifying the pedal board to the absolute essentials.
More money, more problems.
Exactly. So yeah, but anyway, going from the on the guitar pedal subject, my favorite guitar pedals, I do have some. My favorite guitar pedal is I have an RE20 Space Echo. So a lot of like the crazy effects you can make with like delay and like reverb. I used to do it a lot in our band, like the.
Oh yeah, you did do that, all that airy shit, eh?
I love that stuff.
Yeah, that was
it's like
cool.
having a chaos pad. But,
Oh, you did that.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of guys do that, but it's I guess that is kind of cool to.
It's fun to do it in like in a tasteful place and to kind of mix it up, you know, because and I really enjoy a lot of electronic music, and a lot of electronic music has a lot of chaos pad, filter sweep stuff, and I've always wanted to try and incorporate that in my own way into the music I've made, especially when we were doing heavy stuff. I was like, oh, it'd be really cool to like make some weird electronic like sounds. It's one of my favorite pedals. Yeah,
I find that and then there's the other side of it, which would be like. Yeah, okay, you see guitarists and bassists, and they'll be buying all these pedals. They ain't fucking using them.
Yeah.
And like I say, it's more money, more problems, more things can go wrong. But I've slightly like seen kind of where they're coming from. It's like their hobby as well. Like,
yeah, it's your passion.
Yeah, like so they've added this new little thing. They might use it for one little bit. And they're like, oh, did you hear my new pedal? And I'm like, yeah. I didn't fucking hear shit. Like, fucking, like, man. Like, especially if you're on the drums. Every drum, like, as every drum would know, it's just cymbals.
Yeah.
But basically, I always used to be like, why do people buy all these fucking pedals, man? They're not even going to use them all. But then you understand, it's like, okay, they might actually sit at home and fuck around with all the shit and have a field day at home. And so
absolutely.
That's kind of cool. It's like a hobby. And then you get into a studio, and the engineer's like, oh yeah, cool story, bro. And you're just like, yeah, fucking sweet.
Yeah, it's
we're
like
gonna use that, and we're gonna use that, and a really good head.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it, I'm gonna fucking on the computer.
Yeah, because also the other thing is plugins are so and
fucking good
these
now,
days
man.
are amazing. Wow. Like digital plugins, digital effects are better than so many pedals. So it's almost like, do you even need the pedal board? But now there's that discussion between the analog and the digital world, which everyone, in guitars, it's a big discussion. I don't know if it's still as crazy as it was. Like, I guess when I started playing guitar and up and coming, and the first digital amps I heard of were like Pod Farms, and they were shit. They sounded terrible. And even like digital effects. Like I've still got my old digital effects pedal, which I use for guitar tuning, and it has like a foot pedal on it. And because I'm a cheap bastard, it has like an octave pedal, and it also has the octave effect, and it also has the whammy effect on it. So it's just like a 3-in-1. But you can do like distortions and all stuff. They all sound shit. Though I did use it for my cover band because I'm just like, I'm not buying more stuff.
Did you always find when you're playing live and someone wants to use your shit? So I'm not going to talk about drum study, but
next time.
Yeah.
Because I've got a good story about that.
Because your head is what, Hughes and
Kettner. Yeah, it's a Triumph Mark II. I've had it now for 8 years.
I remember when you got it and you brought it in, you went and you're like, "That's not even quarter volume." And fuck, I was just like, "What?" It's like a wall of sound. It was
so heavy.
It was,
and I put it through at the time. My 4x12 Laney cabinet. It's just too much.
It was nuts. It was so loud and so clear.
It was
that's
so clear.
The thing. So clear.
Well, that's
so
the reason
loud.
why I bought it, because at the time I remember looking at heads. I saved up some money, and we were doing quite a few gigs and we were playing a lot. And I was like, well, I was using before like the rehearsal studio we were at. I was using their stuff. Shout out to Robbie, it was cool. So I was just using like some of the stuff there, but I'm like, I need a bigger amp. Like the amp I've got at home, it's too small. Or like if I'd have like I had a Laney head, but it was really old, and then I blew it up. And but it wasn't very good. It wasn't. I mean, I got it for a really good deal, but it wasn't that great. The cab was great. I still got the cabinet now. It's fucking great. But I was like, I want to buy a new head, and I want to spend some money, but I really need to find what I want, because I know I'm fussy, and I know I love experimenting with everything. So if I buy something like a Black Star, I find that very restrictive. It's very good at the grunty metal, some heavy stuff, clean, pretty rubbish. It's not that good. And it's too much gain, too much overdrive. Normally, I find that quite restricting. So as an example of Black Star, not to say Black Star aren't good amps, but for me, I'm like, that doesn't really work for what I want. I want to have a lot of range. So I went through different amps, like Black Star, because I thought I wanted a Mezza Boogie, because my distortion pedal I used to use was a Mezza Boogie throttle box, which has like a high and a low gain channel on it, and it would be quite. I was like, I think I like this distortion a lot, but the pedal only kind of gives you so much. I'm like, what if I get an amp? I mean, the amp was really mid-range. Like, I tried a bunch of heads. I can't remember all the brands.
Orange and...
Oh, no, the Mezza Boogie. The different subset of the Mezza Boogie brands. But it was just too mid-rangey. And just sounded a bit... I was like, oh, it wasn't for me. Not saying these aren't good amps. They're just not... They weren't for me.
Because a lot of metal guitarists say they jump on that... Like, I thought that was...
The brands. It's the brands.
It's the orange...
Orange is nice.
Orange is a good...
I tried orange. Like, I tried orange. I thought I'd like it, but I was... It's been a long time. I haven't gone through and tried amps, like gone through like a guitar shop and had a field day with it. I'd love to. It's been a long time. But yeah, last time I did it, I just found it, maybe this is the orange amps they had. This didn't do much for me. It was just not, it wasn't thick enough. But I can't remember the models that they were. But then anyway, I found a Hughes and Kettner, and I was like, wow, this is expensive. But then I went through it, and I'm like, I love this because the clean channel sounds great. I've even used it for acoustic gigs. The clean channel sounds fucking great. And then it's got 6 different channels. It's like a clean tone, then like a kind of a more lead, kind of more clean tone, and then like a low gain to then like a low lead gain, and then it's got the high gain channel and like a lead high gain. So you have so many options and lots of knobs to twiddle if you want and go crazy with it. But the tone from the tube amp is so good that I was okay, this is me, because I now can have all that range at my fingertips just to fuck with all the knobs and do all that shit.
I remember at gigs as well, there was a depending on which night it was or how hungover the fucking sound dude was. You didn't really know what sound you were going to get. For drums, I was just like, as long as I can hear my kick and snare, like I was just, at the end of it, don't even mic my snare because it was too fucking loud.
Yeah, your snare was so loud. We'll talk about it next time.
Yeah, but as long as I could hear the kick and it was kind of leveled. But I noticed that, I think there was one gig we did, and the sound guy kept turning you down, but because your amp was so grunty, you were just like, fucking later bowl.
Yeah.
He was just turning it up on stage. He was turning it down through the PA, and you were just like winding it up on stage like all day, man. And it was
such a guitarist thing I do.
Yeah. But I think guitarists do it, but with tones as well, like you're saying about the tube things, I totally agree that when they're running hot and they're just fucking going, it's like...
This is also like the with using tube amps, like they're very special in that way. And I think that's one of the things I love about tube amps is like you can really get your sound from it. Whereas like with a digital amp, I mean, they've gotten amazing, because I haven't really gigged in like an original band in quite a long time. But even like, when was the last time? So it was 6 years ago. Last time I was in sort of doing gigs and that, digital amps had gotten really good. So like the Kempers and Axifix is another big one.
Oh, yeah.
But I was always like, I don't know, it feels like something's missing a bit. But I have been to the studio since then and tried an Axifix there. And I was like, all right, they've gotten really good now. Like, I see why people love these. And like the clean tones are great. The distortions are really good. So yeah, they've come a long way, but I think the personality, that's what people get a little bit like fussy about, like how much personality can you bring out of a digital amplifier or whatever. But they are amazing for touring, because instead of like bringing like a big fuck off amp, big fuck off head, you can just bring along, a little suitcase of like your head and just plug into the PA and no worries, and you've got all your presets.
The tube style amp, especially something like what you have, or maybe Orange or whatever, it complements the guitarist and their playing, and it complements them as a person. Whereas, when you hear the digital stuff, it sounds like lo-fi.
Yeah,
it's just one. For that metal kind of stuff, it would just had that one sound, and I was like,
everyone's kind of using the same preset
and I was like, oh, cool. And then next song, it's doing the same shit, and I'm like, wow, there's not much going. And the thing is, they can never wind up like a tube amp can. Tubes just fuck when they go, man. It's just like, wow, these things hum. Pretty good.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing I find with what that I love about tube amps for sure. But the convenience of digital is just, you know.
Yeah, you can walk into a gig and just play.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think if I was ever in a touring band, like a proper one, like traveling around the world, I would not bring a tube amp.
No.
Fuck that. And also, so much can go wrong because if your tube amp fucks up, you've got to have the spare. But with the digital, it's like it can go wrong, I guess. Like if the computer fucks up, then I guess you got to have another computer ready, but you got to have a roadie to probably help you out with that. Is there more that can go wrong with digital live? Good. I actually don't know. I haven't actually really thought about that because analog can fuck up pretty easy. A tube gets blown in the amp, or you know, like someone's going past the amp and knocks it off. You know, dumb shit happens, or weather conditions, lots of rain, lots of electrical equipment. You know, not a good time. So
how did you find playing bass? Because you played bass for quite some time as well.
yeah. I love bass.
You pick or fingers?
Fingers all day.
Yeah.
Fingers all day. I have done pick though. I have done pick bass. Sometimes it sounds good just for the tonal quality you can get out of a pick. It has its place. But I do find, for a lot of the songs I've done in my life, I find fingers, all day, sort of the best way to go. But the thing I love about the bass, which I never really used my bass skill until I probably recorded my solo stuff. Because I was always like, well, as long as the bass is doing what the guitar does or is following a little bit of matching the drums, you know, my creativity with the bass was pretty limited. I didn't really think. We used to be in a band with a bassist who was fucking crazy. It was awesome.
Felix,
yeah.
Fuck.
He was nuts. But but I was also in my head, I'm like, oh, I don't need to worry about it because he's got it covered. Fucking sweet. So when you have a good bassist, or any good musician, it's like, oh, they know what they're doing. Cool. But I didn't think about what he was doing in the sense of he's really doing something creative and cool here and bringing so much I mean, he was, and I've been with bassists who do bring a lot, but I'm like, oh, that's their expertise. You know, I trust them.
He was
nuts.
He was fucked up.
He was wild. He was a wild boy.
He was a wild boy.
But my point about me playing bass was when I got into the studio, and then it was like, I should really. I was with Ran as well. The guys produced both of us, and we were like, should really push my bass ability in the sense of using it to vocal lines or trying to do different sort of thinking about the bass differently rather than just rhythmic. Using it a lot more for melodies than that, which I know has been done before. It's not a new concept, but I was like, why have I never done that? Why have I never really used the bass as a vocal instrument? Because it can totally be a vocal instrument.
Yeah, Sting.
And yeah, exactly right.
Fucking holy shit, man! He's bass and singing. It was just like, there you go.
Well, and like making the bass do the vocal parts, right?
Yep.
Yeah, doing all that. So I kind of learned a lot of that when I was in the studio. It was really cool. So I'd say with my bass ability these days, I like to put in little licks here and there. I like to put in little, little changes and but I don't really get too crazy with it. I can't slap bass that great. I mean, I can. I'm not that good. I'm not really a funk bassist. I'm probably more of a indie rock singer-songwriter, probably sort of type of bassist. Like the metal stuff, I don't think I'm that good to do proper metal stuff, the that's pretty in hundies with the endurance.
You could pick it.
Yeah, I can pick it. But it's not the same.
I know it's not the same. I find it doesn't have the same sound, the same feel about it.
The craziest bassist I've ever seen, not live, but videos of, is Alex something from what's that band? Cannibal Corpse. And he's all fingers. And I watch him play, and I'm like, fuck.
Because they do that. It just keeps going.
That is nuts. Yeah. It's proper crazy watching that.
I find with a good bass as well, it is so important, bass guitar, and the reasons why is, for me, the little driving force of a band, not to fucking blow my own trumpet, but erase the cymbals, is a kick, a snare, and a bass. I find that is the ultimate low tone root for it.
It's got to lock in together.
It just has to lock in. So it's very important for bassists to be locked in with their drummers.
Yeah.
The kick and ignore the fucking cymbals and tom shit. Just lock in with that kick and snare where that's happening, man. and your songs will just end up so punchy, so rhythmical, and so like I don't know, just the drive and the writing style will just get better and better.
It'll be
and better.
unique.
Yeah,
You'll bring something pretty special out if it's yeah. I mean, like you say, like the bass and the drums. If the band has a good drummer and a good bassist, the guitarist could be kind of shit.
Yeah, because they can just wear. I mean, I could actually name a band that's quite famous where I don't think much of the guitarist, but I'm not going to. But let's just say the bassist is crazy. Fuck it, Les Claypool.
Yeah.
Les Claypool and is it Tim, the drummer of he was fucking that. Those two were just.
You're talking about Primus.
Yeah. They were just crazy. Whereas the guitarist was always just like noodling off on his own thing.
Yeah.
And it was just like those other two dudes are locked in, and you're just like wailing off. But I was like, I found that they were just.
They probably could because as they were so locked.
But then Les Claypool could do the crazy shit.
But then Les Claypool would probably just be like, I don't know, bro, do what you want. I mean, I don't know if that's how he wrote, but that's how I felt. I felt like it went.
They were really their own sound. But I think if I was a bassist, I'd be pretty crazy.
Shreddy.
Yeah,
funky, slapping, crazy funk bassist.
Yeah, I love slap bass and
me too.
the finger playing style. I don't know. For me personally, and I can do a little bit of the double finger thing and a little bit of slap, but it's I find when I hear a pick bass, for me it leans more towards punk and some metal stuff. But when I hear funk, I really hear the bass guitar. The bass guitar is so
well. The bass guitar
prominent.
of funk is like
it's the thing.
It's like the guitar and middle, right? Like the bass is the song is centered around the bass, but pretty much
it is. It's totally is. Yeah, it's like the kick and the bass are just like they're just owning it.
Like it's interesting because when I was in a cover band, I got to play a lot of different genres and play a lot of funk, and it was always interesting like what I do on guitar. So when we play like Michael Jackson songs or Jackson 5. The guitar parts you're doing are very like, like the high pitch sort of like tick, 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 but very like simple rhythms. But then your bass is your melody and is like that's the star of the show beneath the vocals. And even the drums the drums and funk obviously they can get kind of crazy. But
it's
majority
it's the bass.
It's the bass guitar. So that was really interesting to kind of like sit back and check that out. And it's always funny for me, like playing in like I learned like 100 songs for this cover band, so I was playing so much different stuff, and playing like the rock stuff and then like the funk to then like acoustic to then it's like really interesting to know like where my electric guitar parts will fit in these different, very famous, very well-known songs. Like, this parts are very simple. Why is it simple? Was that because the vocals are important here? Like, what was their thinking behind?
So you found that really
placement?
good for songwriting? Would you say
doing
what you did with that?
Oh yeah, I'd say it would.
Like
definitely.
Because after you have
I probably learned so much subconsciously from that. I probably didn't realize.
Yeah. So if you walked away and you wrote a song now and your guitar playing, you're gonna be like, hang on, I had to like learn like 100 different songs or more, and then you're like writing a song. You're like, well, actually, I might write this like "Sweet Child of Mine." Not that you ever would, but you'd something subconsciously, like you say, has come from there, and you're like,
well, "Sweet Child of Mine's an interesting one because we did cover that. And that was a mission to play live, just to try and like get through it and to remember it all because it's so long. And the guitar is like, that's the star of the show in that song. And what I kind of was interesting was like, apart from the drums, like everybody goes hard. The bass is very intricate and quite complex, not like crazy complex, but it's busy, right? It's got a lot going on. Vocals are soaring like crazy, and guitar is like in the choruses. I'm playing these like pretty. Not crazy lead lines, but it's intricate for a chorus. They're intricate guitar licks and riffs happening in a chorus where normally it would be like chords, or it would be... I mean, there is a rhythm guitarist, but Slash is obviously the star of the show, so he's doing his whole thing. So it's quite interesting. Like when I learned that song and we'd play it live, I'd be like, wow, this song is kind of all about me.
Who's your favorite guitarist? Like, if you name a couple.
Favorite guitarists. Ooh.
Like, who's the guy that you like? This would be a good one. Who's the guy or girl that you saw playing guitar, or you heard it and you went, "Fuck, that's a bit of me." Like, I'm on this now.
I got some like weird ones because I probably say one of my favorite guitarists probably I didn't realize at the time, is probably Brad Delson from Linkin Park. But that's not also just because of he's a guitarist. That's actually the band. But his guitar tone.
Right. Oh, and Meteor. Yeah. Well,
I was like, this sounds so fucking cool.
That was a wall of sound.
And I was like, go, 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 go. And I'm okay. And then, anyway, the band, obviously.
But see, that's more tone. That's more
tone than a guitarist. But I think that really caught my ears.
Yeah,
so
right.
as for like guitar playing style, I'd probably say, Jimi Hendrix was one. I think I really liked how he just kind of like was so... when you hear him play, it's like, oh, that's really how he feels, and you really feel what he plays, and I really like that. Other guitarists I'd say that I loved over the years. I quite like Jeff Ling from Parkway Drive. Yeah, he's pretty underrated. Those first Parkway albums are pretty amazing. Like the guitar playing and sort of the way he'd play riffs is quite different, even from other bands in the genre. It was quite. Like in a hardcore, I guess at the time, like
it was metalcore, hardcore sort of stuff.
Marrying the metal and the hardcore. So you got these obviously crazy breakdowns, but very punk inspired. Then these quite complicated technical guitar riffs, which are very metal. And I guess so when they at that time period, that wasn't really a thing. So they kind of were one of the pioneers. I'm not saying they invented it, but they're one of the pioneers of that style of guitar playing. So I really liked a lot of that. Another favorite guitarist. I'd probably say can't remember his full name, but his name's like Chris from Funeral for a Friend. He's really I liked a lot of his stuff because it's like a lot of the great. He's just very diverse with his playing. He could do everything. The heavy guitar playing punk to beautiful fingerstyle acoustic to great tones.
Extremely well-rounded.
Yeah, very well-rounded guitarist, great songwriter as well. So I've seen them live and they were amazing. So I think he's very underrated from a guitarist point of view. And then another one. I can't think of one right now.
I've put you on the spot.
Yeah, you put me on the spot. Can't really think of another one right now. Because I always love bands. I mean, even growing up, it was always bands I love. I love the guitar part of the band. Yeah. But as like the guitarists themselves, it was never like, oh, okay, I just thought of one now. Probably Stephen Carpenter from Deftones.
Oh, yeah. I think you'd have a lot of guitarists agree with you on that.
Yeah.
What about we can agree for Dimebag for what he was doing.
I learned a lot of his songs, but I wouldn't look at Dimebag being like, oh, he's one of my favorite guitarists.
No, for what he was doing for that.
100%.
For what he did.
You can't deny that sort of thing. It's like he was amazing with like the way that they simplified everything.
I think that was his brother's doing as well. Yeah. It was the two of them locked in, and then Rex, X probably had his say as well. They just I don't know, very special human beings. But he was also like Dime as a guitarist. Definitely for me, guitars, man. Do you like Gojira?
Yeah, I've heard a bit of their stuff. They got
solid.
Pretty solid band.
Yeah, man.
I'd like to see them live. That'd be they're going to be real fun.
Yep.
I haven't delved too much into their discography, so I don't know many of their songs from what I've heard. Yeah, the French.
Nah, sweet. Oh, that's cool. How long would you say to like if a young person, which we don't know if any young people will listen to this, what would you say to a young guitarist? Like, I mean, not everyone's you or me. I know what I used to do when I learnt drums and the driving force I had behind it and...
the enthusiasm and the passion, right?
I think a lot of people these days, and I'm not talking about everyone, but a lot of people just expect something just to happen. Yeah. And for me personally, there was no YouTube. There was none of that shit when I learnt drums. And I'll go into what I used to do practicing and stuff. But for you... what hours would you do a day practicing?
So when I first started, I was playing every day, especially in school, but I'd find any opportunity to pick up my electric guitar. I couldn't wait. It was like finding like your favorite video game to play. It was basically like that. So probably in high school and even a bit after high school, probably say if I could find the guitar during the day at school, maybe at lunchtime, or I'd maybe in music time I might play. Maybe an hour, go home, 2 hours, probably 3 hours a day.
Yeah.
Roughly. I mean, give or take maybe few hours off.
And it does take like...
It took me ages, but I learned guitar really quick from being in bands. That's how I got much better. Yeah. That's how my ability, because I could play. You play in your room, you learn songs and whatever, and you do develop. But being in a band, that's where I really cut my teeth, and I really learned how to be a better guitarist. I really learned much better techniques and how the techniques fit in with the song, and when's the appropriate time to do this kind of riff, or songwriting, and then developing the technical skill at the same time. So the bands was the way I actually sped up my process so quickly, because I was writing a lot, and I was kind of like, at one point, I even think with our band a little bit, I was like writing songs to sort of see how far I can push my songwriting and guitar ability at the same time.
Yeah.
So
that was good, because you still managed to come back to the root thing, was your rhythm playing.
Never got
fucking
That's
crazy.
kind of what I mean about like the Brad Delson thing, is because he was writing just like to the song.
Yeah.
The guitar's not... It's a standout thing, but it's not a standout thing in that band. It's obviously, the vocals, and, Chester was, and same with Mike Shinoda. But, the guitar was just so powerful and strong, and I was like, I always want to have, like, a really powerful and strong guitar part that really cuts through and really smacks you and can be memorable, and almost like a vocal, or, like, a catchy guitar riff. Hook. Yeah, like I've always loved that about guitar. And then like a chorus, like it's time to just let the vocals go, and let's get to this really big part, and then we can come back to the riff, or we can go to this part of the bridge. And I think it was like a puzzle as well. Like I was just really love the idea of this musical puzzle of how to like write a song. And with guitar, I could express so much, and that's the other thing about tones. It's like, here's a heavy section, here's a lighter section, here's no guitar, and then here's big fucking 10 layers of heavy guitars, and then harmony guitars and little like atmospheric parts. And I was just like, man, I just love this puzzle of like figuring out how it all comes together.
It's weird, because I actually started off as a guitarist, but that's fucking cool to hear that shit, because it's not a lot of people know the full story, but like kids these days, I think they need to understand that if you're going to learn an instrument, you want to be in a band, hey, I'd say go and do it. Don't lose your life, and remember, don't throw out your whole life to be a musician. That's one thing I can talk about, which I would say don't ever do what I did. But you can still chase your dreams and all that, but you're going to have to put in fucking hours of sitting in a room and just doing either scales or learning pick technique, which is a freaking huge thing, and which pick to use for that guitar. And like, it's just...
the pick that's a little part of it, but it's more like, how much do you want to do it?
Yeah.
You'll really find out, because also you're going to suck for years.
Bro, I learned guitar before...
Drums, right?
Drums, yeah. I was learning guitar, and I was just sort of starting to surf, but at the same time, but I was at high school, and I was like, oh, what are you doing my first year at high school? And I was like, oh, I'll learn guitar. And then my best mate, who's like now bought guitars that he doesn't use. If he ever watches this, you need to pick your fucking guitars up and start learning them. He was learning drums. And so he walked up to me one day, and my parents had bought me this little electric guitar, and he was like, what's your name? And he looked at it, and it was funny because my last name's Squire, and it was a Squire.
The Fender Squire,
It was a Squire. He's like, that's cool, man. We should have a jam. And then I realized he was a surfer, and I pushed him surfing. He pushed me surfing. We both just threw the instruments away.
Yeah,
we're going surfing instead, man. It was way more fun. It was more enjoyable, I would say. Whereas, I in some ways I still wish I had put the time in on guitar with certain things. But now that I see it, I'm like, man, if I was going to learn like the string side of it, I would definitely lean towards a bass.
The bass more.
I think it's just
the experience of being in bands.
And I just see what a kick and a snare does, and I can see how drivey a bass is. Don't get me wrong, like I say, man, Seven Dust blew my fucking mind for tone. I was just like, this is the best guitar. I was jizzing on the fucking guitar tone. I was like, this is the best shit ever. But for me, if I was playing an instrument, it would be 100% bass guitar, man.
Cool.
That's fucking primo.
Yeah, the other thing as well was something I've come to love over the years was acoustic guitar.
Yes.
Which I will grab my my steel string.
Ed Sheeran?
Yeah.
Sorry, bro. Ed Sheeran. But There's only one thing that kind of gets me about acoustic, and I love it, man. I really do. I love electric acoustics, and you get these 12-string acoustic guitars and stuff.
So this is my steel string acoustic. It's a Takamine. I think it's a D series Takamine. I've had this for it's hit my mic. I've had this for about 6 years. Acoustic electric. I played shitloads of gigs with it, doing like singer-songwriter to my solo stuff. Scotty MCB, Nighthawk Experience. I'll put that back. Otherwise, I'm gonna like drop it or some shit. But the thing I love about the acoustic is that it gives me so much room to do other things. Like it opened up another whole world, because when I first learned guitar, well, if someone gave me a guitar to play, it was back in intermediate, and it was like a nylon string, and I was like, this is fucking boring. And the guitar teacher I had, it was like, let's learn, like, what are we, I was like, I remember one of the songs was Drunken Sailor. And I was like, what we gonna do with a drunken sailor? What we gonna do with a drunken sailor early in the morning? And I'm like, yeah, nah, this is shit. I was like, I'm never fucking playing this. So, because at the time I was playing the saxophone, so I was like, because at that point in my life, music was very academic. Music for me is probably different from you, because music was always academic for myself. So I grew up playing actually the alto saxophone, which is cool. But alto saxophone is very much like a lead instrument or something you sort of add on top of. It's not a songwriting tool.
No.
So music for me was always like academic, learning scales, learn music theory, sitting in class, you do like exams. So music for a long time was actually school.
Yeah, right.
It wasn't even fun, really.
Yeah,
It was just school. And then
with the saxophone, I like to call them the saxophone.
Saxophone.
Every time I hear it, I'm like, sex, someone's having sex.
She's that careless whisper, like.
Yeah. But it's just a key sex instrument, so it's called a saxophone. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah, but kind of like for guitar, like so like yeah. Back to what my main point was acoustic guitar in the beginning was not interesting, and it sounded like something I'd have to play that was going to be related to academic or
like
school.
You're forced.
Yeah, and I'm like, I don't fucking want to do this. Whereas electric guitar was like, it's cool, it's edgy, man, and I was like, yeah, this is my thing, and I can express myself. Yeah, there's a lot of that stuff for sure. But then I came back to the acoustic years later, and I played a good steel string, and I'm like, fuck yeah, I've missed. I actually really like this. And it was just different tonal qualities, different style of playing. Doesn't need to be complex, and it can also just sound lush. Different tones. Yeah, so I was like, oh, this is really cool. I really enjoyed learning the acoustic. And I picked up, obviously, it's not that different from electric in some ways, but I was like, different songwriting ability and singer-songwriter. So when I started writing acoustic songs. Writing indie stuff to acoustic rock to pop rock and that, and I'm like, I really like this as well. And I started getting into vocals. That was another big journey for myself. That was hard. That was tough, because learning an instrument and being told you're bad at your instrument hurts, but having someone tell you that your voice sucks, that hurts even more. It cuts you so fucking deep.
And you know what? We both suck!
Yeah, we both shit. But I remember the first time I heard my voice singing, I'm like, oh, God. And I was like, I did these open mics for like a year and a bit. And I knew it. I just like, the only way to get better, Scott, is to do it. And I'm like, do I really want to do it? Do I really want to sing? I can go get someone else to sing. And I'm like, I can go get someone else to sing. I can write the lyrics and they can sing the lyrics and whatever. I'm like, no, I'm just going to, I have to do it. Yeah. I have to do it. And that was, it was tough. I got an open mic every week for about a year and a half. And for most of it, I was shit. People would watch me. People would support. Like, people weren't mean, because it's an open mic. So,
but it was the acoustic singer-songwriter thing that people were gravitating to. I see, like, every second person plays acoustic guitar and sings a few songs these days, and that's cool. I get a little bit like,
no, don't get me wrong, it can get a bit boring and dull, and like,
it's good for bars if you're having casual drinks. Some dudes in the corner just singing some soft songs.
I think with an acoustic artist, like, I mean, there's a lot of amazing ones. There's a lot of people who obviously can play acoustic guitar, in that. But for me, it was like I had done, you know, metal, punk, like I had done all these other genres, very electric guitar focused. I had never really delved into the acoustic songwriting thing because I wasn't always like, oh, that music bores me. It's not interesting. It doesn't provide me with really anything. But then I'm like, oh, actually, it's really cool and can provide me another whole world of songwriting and learning to kind of get immersed in. So I love both now. I think I'd still choose the electric though, but I would.
Having the electric is
I
like
would miss the acoustic.
having you on your electric the way you play is like someone saying, "Oh, here's a MotoGP bike and there's a racetrack. Off you go." And you're like, "Fuck yeah!"
Yeah.
And you know you're just into it. It's yeah, I like it, but once again as well, I still lean towards when I hear good electric guitar tone. I'm just like, oh man, I love this shit, and it does because of you. And some other guitarists, it's really interested me when I see them going through their different amps. And it's funny because I've started to like, in other bands, I'm like, oh, what head is he using? Oh, it's not valve gay.
It's not a valve amp.
Yeah.
Solid state.
Yeah, and then they got like a little pedal, and it's like, oh yeah, sweet as. But yeah, and
that's it. What's interesting as well is the amount of guitarists I've heard who are really good, like very talented on the guitar, and they'll have terrible gear.
Fuck, that sucks.
And it's always like, but I get it. It's not cheap.
No,
like,
it's not.
It's always like, but it's always unfortunate. It's like I've played with bands and stuff, and I look at the gear, I'm like, fuck, man. Like if you just had like a better amp and that, like obviously, like for me, like I had to save up and buy all these things, you know, or I'd have to beg my parents to get me some money for Christmas so I can go and get some rock shop, some guitar shop vouchers or something. But like a lot of these things have taken me years to get, and it hasn't been an overnight thing. And it shouldn't be, because if you have crap gear to begin with, you will learn to obviously appreciate it later. But you have to understand that the skill, the talent, it's in your fingers. It's like with anything, like you can buy anything fancy or a high quality brand, but if you don't know how to like play it or use it, fucking, what's kind of the point?
What's the point?
So that's always because I for years I learned guitar on a Fender Squier.
Yay!
For about 5 years. As a piece of, I mean, I don't want to call it a piece of shit, but it was like, it's a cheap guitar.
That's holding you back.
And, but eventually it was.
Yeah.
But in the beginning it wasn't. It was like, well, if I love guitar, I'll just make this work.
Do you find with young kids these days? I mean, some of them.
I don't know. I don't meet many young kids. You just see them on the TikToks.
Yeah, I find that they're just too into like
better than me.
digital. It's like, I'm a DJ, bro. I push buttons. Fuck yeah. And it's like, oh yeah. Might want to edit that out. Beep. But the thing is, I find that kids will have to realize that, like learning instrument or any instrument, but like learning guitars and stuff, that the initial cost might cost a little bit, nowhere near what fucking drums does.
No, drums is another. We'll do that next time.
Fucking horrible. But it's you're gonna suck for like a while. Like
that's the thing. It's like, how much do you really want to play, and how much do you really want it? Because you're not gonna get great gear. And also the thing is, like when you write songs, I think we talked about this last time. It's like no one owes you anything.
Nah.
No one owes you anything.
No.
So when you come out and play, it's like, well, do you love it?
Yeah.
Because that's all that's going to matter, really. It's like, I learned on a Fender Squier on my tiny Fender, 10 watt amp. It was just like a little like combo that I got from, back at the time, something it was called, what was it called? Not like KBB, but another guitar shop that was around, and it's not around anymore. And I was like, yeah, this is so cool at that time, because I'm like, well, I can actually learn, and it's my thing. And if I really want to pursue it, then I can upgrade my gear and I can do what I want. But it's like, the initial part of like, the passion, the love, the development of skill, that doesn't come from playing on fancy gear.
Nah, it doesn't actually come. It just comes because I mean, you do see really good players. They pick up something. I've seen a drummer pick up a $10 drum kit like at a dump. And literally walk into a bar because he had a gig and he had sold his drums for other reasons. Yeah. So he bought like a rubbish dump kit. Yeah. Just mic'd it up and he was like, bro, I just bought this afternoon, and he ripped. And I was like, whoa.
That's always going to be the
But the
as
musicians,
it's like those ones online. They'll have like Zach Wilde, who played with Ozzy Osbourne and Black Label Society. He had like a Hello Kitty guitar, and they just like play Black Sabbath or like play like his own songs.
Yeah.
He made it sound amazing.
Fuck, that's crack.
But it's like, once again, like, does the gear matter? Yes, but no. Yes, but no.
To a point, it does.
To a point, it does. Like, obviously, like, you want to take it seriously. Like, let's say you want to go play live, which means you are wanting to take it serious. You probably want to have a little look into to gear, even in any way, like guitarist, bassist, drummer, keyboard player, yada yada. Like, you need it. Even as a vocalist, like, can you trust the vocal mic at the venue? Maybe not.
Well, let's be honest, we don't want to touch it.
We don't know.
It's nasty shit. We don't know where that mic's been.
Exactly. So, that's kind of like if I have any advice, it would just be like, just get some cheap general gear and just see if you find it fun. Like if I had to break it down to the gear, I recommend getting like a Fender Squier type guitar or something like that. And obviously, on your computer now, there's so many plugins and there's so many
there's so many tutorials.
Yeah, well, exactly. So, but I would say just get the guitar. And honestly, I wouldn't even say get an amp these days. I'd say, unless you want to go play to people, I recommend, if you're just starting out, grab an electric guitar, a cheap one, a couple of $100 or something, secondhand, and then get some plugins. I'll get an interface for your computer. Plug it into your computer if you have a computer, or even iPad, you can do it. And then just play and learn from there. Like, the world is so much your oyster, because when I learned guitar, it was like this turning point with all this gear and YouTube. YouTube wasn't quite what it is now, so there wasn't really tutorials. There was Ultimate Guitar, which is like a big tablature website which has all the songs. Ultimate Guitar is amazing. Shout out, because they do great tabs, and it's so good these days. Like, you can actually have like a whole song with all the music in front of you. You can mute every part, solo every part. It's fucking amazing. I love it. Guitar Pro, yeah. But back in the day, like, they would have the tabs, but then you have like 10, 20 versions. Because everyone's writing their own interpretation of the song, or is it right, and how many stars does it have, and like, is it any good? I would you had no idea, but Ultimate Guitar has been around for a long time. Like, I think 99.
Oh, fucking hell.
That's an old website, but it's come a long way. But even when I was learning guitar, so it would have been like 2008, 2009. Like, it had some tabs on there, but there wasn't really any tutorials. Like, YouTube had kind of just got going. So I learned all this stuff on my own and with a music teacher, or I just sat at home and practice.
Practice, yeah. Well, that's the key thing to any.
It is practice.
Any young kid or anyone that wants to learn guitar, or not even young, but like, if you want to learn guitar, you just have to, or guitar, any instrument, but we're just talking about guitars, is like, you are going to have to fail for a lot and just climb that hill slowly, like all the rest of us did, and eventually you'll play a song and be like, holy shit, I just played this song on guitar. I think for my best mate, he always wanted to play a Foo Fighters song, and I was like, bro, I think you could probably play it pretty easily, like the acoustic versions.
Yeah.
They're quite stripped back. I think he overthinks it, maybe. And I was like, you could actually really quickly learn this song if you actually applied yourself, and then you could sing away and all that sort of thing. But for anyone playing, it's going to take time, but you'll get there, and then you'll go down the rabbit hole of
then you'll get obsessed.
Then you get amps and all the
you can get crazy. That's one of the things over the years I've had to learn how to just calm it down. Like like going back to the song again. Like, I could be here forever going through guitar tones, to going through guitar parts that you write, through then going through different types of production. But it's like, like, am I enjoying, is the song cool, and am I enjoying the song? And so that's actually ultimately what matters. Like, I mean, I've been playing guitar now for quite a while. I mean, probably 13, 14 years. And after being in all the bands and doing whatever, it's like, I just, You know, like, is this fun? Is this the song cool? Am I getting excited about it? And then I guess now I've got the knowledge of, you know, I've gone down the rabbit holes of tone. I've gone down the rabbit holes of gear. I've gone down the rabbit holes of writing different kinds of songs and being parts of different bands and music. And I guess I've got the experience where I can just be like, you know, when I'm writing a song or when I'm doing something, I'm like, oh, I can just pull a little bit of experience or knowledge from this time of my life. Or I can, I remember when I did something like that. Would that work here? And, I remember this type of pedal, or not that pedal, like this effect could be really cool in like a, I don't know, a pre-chorus section or, I don't know, stuff like that. And it's all like kind of in the subconscious, which is really cool. But I wouldn't be here unless I went crazy hard on all of it. Like,
we wouldn't have met if you didn't learn guitar.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. It's funny when you met as well, but when we met, because we were just briefly in another band.
Yeah, we were. Yeah.
And they said something about this other guy, Scott, coming in to do lead, of all things. And the first thing I noticed, I was way too old to bet, even though you're quite a bit younger. I was like, man, I'm done so much more than this band has done. But hey, I was like fucking new to Auckland City, and I was like, I'll join a band. And the guitarist was really bad. Like, that was in the band. And then they're like, oh, this guy...
He wasn't very good.
Yeah, and this guy, Scott's going to turn up and play lead or whatever. And you turned up and you're real, like, I found you were really closed off. Just like, hey, right. I don't know if it was the setting or what was going on. And they went out for a cigarette break. And the second you're like, oh, they're gone. And I was just like, holy fuck. Because this is what I do.
Yeah,
I was like, this is what I do. And I was just like, and you're like, and we're just off. And I was like, we need to jam.
Yeah.
And that's where
that was a magic moment.
That's where that bromance started. But yes, I think, you're like, click. And I was just like, fuck yeah, I'm down with that.
Yeah, that was a special moment.
Yeah,
fucking cool.
And then we bailed from them pretty quickly.
Yeah, we made our own thing, and then
straight away.
I think we went back to one more practice, and then we're like, nah. Because you showed me your song, and then I was like, oh, that's cool. I like some of that. And then I showed you some stuff I don't like. Oh yeah, and then the bromance started, and we're like, later, bowl.
Latest them.
Sweet, man. I think we might call it there.
Yeah,
it's
bro.
been quite a long one. Fucking sweet. Only
good
Scots.